Let's build a gaming PC inside Antec's new Performance 1M. Now I know right away what you're thinking, Greg, another ITX PC build on your channel. We've done maybe 3 or 4 of those in the past month or 2. This is a little over the top. What could possibly be different about this particular ITX build? And to that, my friends, I say, just wait. You see, the Performance 1M is a little special in that it is extremely versatile internally. So normally where you'd have like a fixed chassis with a fixed frame, a fixed area to install a motherboard, install a graphics card, that stuff in here is actually adjustable. And here's what I mean by that. So let's start by removing the top panel, totally toolless. You can see Antec's baked quite a bit of aesthetic airflow into these things. Then we can remove the left panel, again, toolless, same for the right panel. By the way, yes, in case you're wondering, the front panel is totally sealed off, but not to worry, every other panel in this chassis has perforations. I suppose while we're here, I'll show you minimalist front I/O, so a single red power button and a single Type-C port. That is it. By the way, the color of this case is called aventurine. Many of you don't know this about me, but I actually minored in geology. It was one of my favorite subjects in school, and it went hand in hand with my undergrad major, which was petroleum engineering. I never thought I would see the day when geologic terms would clash with PC case marketing. What a world we live in. But anyway, back to the uniqueness. Now, obviously the color is pretty unique, but this is not the main selling point in my opinion. It is this central frame here, which I've already loosened, so it's gonna be wobbly a bit, but just to convey the flexibility of this case. This entire central part of the chassis, which holds the power supply, the graphics card, and the platform, is adjustable. So depending on how thick your graphics card is, which will reside on this side closer to the camera, you can slide this entire thing up or down to either make more room for a larger graphics card or more room for a larger platform, say with a beefier CPU cooler attached. Maybe this angle will do it a bit more justice. You can see this is where we mount our 2-slot graphics card, but in this config, we have room for up to a 3+ slot shroud. However, if we don't want that extra space, let's say we're running a slimmer graphics card, we can slide this entire platform forward such that we have less wasted space against the left side panel. So for a true 2-slot graphics card, you'd want something like this, and inevitably, you'll free up more room on the other side of this tray for your platform, for your motherboard, and a beefier CPU cooler. And just to reiterate again, from the rear, you can see we have now more space on the left side from your perspective for our motherboard, but if we don't need as much space on that side, we can slide the entire central part of this frame toward your left and free up more space for a much larger, much thicker graphics card. So this kind of versatility is pretty cool. I love that Antec is giving you options. The Performance 1M also includes support for up to SFX-L power supply, so not standard units, unfortunately, but this is a more compact chassis, so it makes sense, and you'll situate these units directly beside your motherboard, which again, has to be ITX in this case. There's no room for MATX or above. You will find an included PCIe Gen 4 riser at this price point, which is nice. This is already pre-mounted, so you should just be able to drop and play with your graphics card of choice. And as mentioned earlier, practically every exterior panel in this chassis is very perforated, should be great for airflow, with the exception of the front panel, but there's no place to mount fans up there anyway. Even the bottom panel with its integrated feet is perforated. This one also includes a dust filter, and you can mount up to 2 120 or 140 mil fans just above it. And Antec's given us just enough clearance to allow fans at the base to breathe, about 1.5 centimeters. See, it's no secret that ITX case manufacturers have it pretty tough. They have to weigh the pros and cons of additional hardware support against the increase in volume of said chassis. If a case is too large, but it only supports ITX motherboards and SFX power supplies, that kind of sort of defeats the purpose, right? Combine that with the ever-increasing size of today's graphics cards, and you can see where the fork in the road emerges. Just how large can a chassis like this get before it begins to look a lot more like an MATX one? And that's what, in my opinion, Antec has done very well with the Performance 1M. They have transformed an otherwise static chassis, a sort of what you see is what you get sort of package, for a flexible one that accommodates larger graphics cards and larger platforms with beefier coolers alike. But enough talk, how about we build in the Performance 1M? We've partnered with Antec to highlight all of this case's features, and we can't really go any further without stuffing components inside of it. I've even elected to choose a graphics card that sort of kind of matches its red interior. I'm excited about this one. I hope you'll stay with me. If you're planning your next PC build, then consider checking out our sponsor, VIP SCD Key. Their Windows 10 and 11 OEM keys sell for a fraction of retail and will unlock the full potential of your OS. They'll also remove those pesky activation watermarks. Click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options, including Windows 10 and 11, Pro and Home, and more. Let's kick things off straight away with our platform assembly. So we're going to be starting things off with a Z690i motherboard from Gigabyte. This has a beefy heatsink. You can see this large shroud here that covers our M.2 area. We have 2 DDR4 DIMM slots, which will keep the cost down a bit, and of course our LGA 1700 socket. We're gonna be using a Core i7 12700K. Yes, this is only a 12th gen chip, but it's not plagued with 13th and 14th gen voltage issues, so that's a win in my book. You can also find these relatively cheaply on sites like Amazon and Newegg. Gonna carefully lower her in the socket like so, and then lower the cover and lower the retention arm. Ooh, we'll save this for a rainy day if I can get it unhooked. Good, come on, there we go. The DIMMs I've chosen are from Corsair. These are Vengeance RGB Pro modules. They are 16 gigs apiece for a grand total of 32, which is a new sweet spot for most modern gaming. These also have tasteful RGB baked in. Next, we need to remove this cover for access to our uppermost M.2 slide. That screw is very long, I didn't expect that. And we'll be installing a 1 terabyte Intel NVMe. Last thing on the platform agenda is our CPU cooler, and for that, I've elected for a Noctua NH-L9i. This is a bit small for a Core i7 unlocked SKU. Yes, I understand that. We won't be doing any manual overclocking despite this having the capability, both the motherboard and the CPU, but I think many of you will be surprised by just how much of a punch this little CPU cooler packs. Don't mind me just applying some thermal compound, good old Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut. And now here's where things get a little interesting because we have to flip the entire thing over and tighten the cooler from the bottom. So yeah, a little bit backwards here. We'll get the fan connected here. And would you look at this, the most compact ITX platform I have ever assembled on this channel. You can probably see now why I chose such a compact cooler for an unlocked Core i7. I knew I'd get some flack for that, but hopefully this explains the reasoning. This is literally a perfect fit. And even if I had chosen something that was still low profile, but a bit beefier, you can see that surrounding this board, I would have had constraints pretty much everywhere. I'm not even sure that any of those would have fit, but this is super snug, almost like all of these components were made for each other. So now we can carefully drop her into the Performance 1M. You can see, oh yeah, this is gonna be such a good looking build. Just from parts choice alone, really like the way that this looks inside such a compact chassis. We've got our little accessory box of goodies here. This should have all the screws we'll need to finish the build. Let's not forget while we're here to go ahead and connect our PCIe riser cable. We're just about ready to install the power supply, but I'm taking a few minutes to cable manage front panel wiring. So that's basically just 2 wires. It's not super difficult here. Just want to get these situated and out of the way. This should hopefully make things easier, not only for the power supply, but also our graphics card, which will be on this side of the chassis. And in goes our SF1000. Now, if you are planning to build this exact rig, I do recommend you downgrade the wattage of your SFX unit or SFXL. Remember, it supports up to that. You don't need 1000 watts here. You could probably get away safely with around 650 to 750. Want to make sure we have our internal power cable already connected along with the unit in the on position. Now, just working on even more cable management. I really want to clean this up. I don't expect we're going to be able to see too much in here, but this is important to me. This is just a pride thing at this point, and fortunately Antec's included tons of zip tie mounting points. I think you'll get a decent sense here for just how much space there is to work with in the Performance 1M. This is admittedly on the larger side of ITX chassis. As a result, there's ample cable management headroom, and you've probably noticed that I have shifted the central frame such that there's an even amount of space between the platform side and the graphics card side. Of course, our GPU is not going to be very, very large, and so I just kind of split the amount of space evenly and divided the central frame right down the middle. Now it's time for the final piece of our puzzle, the AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX. This is pretty much the biggest, the baddest from AMD at this point, and I do recommend that if you're building this in late 2024 or early 2025, you strongly consider the GRE in place of this. The XTX was the one I had on hand. I didn't feel like buying a GRE just for the sake of this video, seeing as though the performance differences aren't major. However, the price is, and that's why, again, the GRE should be on your radar if you're looking for something very powerful from Team Red. All that's left to do now is get it situated. We're gonna be nice and gentle with it because, well, it's always a bit tricky getting these things to slot into riser cables. I'm not sure why this one doesn't want to. Come on, there we go. Alrighty. So that looks pretty good. You can see we still have tons of space off to the right here. We'll make sure it is tightened down. Connect supplemental PCIe power, and here we are. What a cool looking ITX build with still plenty of space left over. We could have fit a much, much larger graphics card in here. That is something that Antec has definitely made sure to include with this chassis, is support for even the latest and greatest hardware. You will be limited, of course, in terms of how large your CPU cooler can be. That's not outside the norm for an ITX chassis, but on the graphics card side, for sure, we have plenty of room. And again, that flexibility with its adjustable central frame. This will be a bit impromptu, but I want to show you what this chassis looks like with everything connected, including these side panels here. We also have an option with this chassis of swapping out these perforated panels for tempered glass panels, and I do want to show you that as well. I actually have a set of tempered glass panels with me. We aren't sure as of time of filming what they are going to cost. I think Antec is working on rolling those out as an option, so you don't have to be charged necessarily for something you won't use if you prefer the perforated version like we have here. But you can see with it all on, it's pretty difficult to see anything inside, and I'm okay with that. It's sometimes not a priority for folks to want to cable manage to the point where, you know, it's actually worth showing off. And so this is a great way to not only keep the form in terms of cooling, but also hide some of that maybe not so pretty cable management if it's not your forte. So these here are the tempered glass panels. One of these is solid glass. We actually have another panel here that is kind of half and half. It's like 2/3 glass and then 1/3 perforation. I think I would put this on the graphics card side. That would be where I would put it, just because the graphics card tends to be a little more sensitive to temperature, although I have seen the opposite before. I'll go ahead and throw the solid glass panel on this side, just so you can see what it looks like. There you go. So you get a sneak peek into both the platform and the power supply. I'm not too concerned about thermals here because you're still going to get active ventilation either from the top or introduction of fresh air from below, maybe vice versa, depending on the orientation of any fans on the bottom of the case that you throw in. I'm not throwing fans in because I plan to forego the tempered glass, but again, it is a nice option. Here is the 2/3 panel, which I'll throw on the graphics card side just so you get an idea of what that looks like. I actually like this a lot. I wish I had 2 of these. I would probably go for this if we had 2 of these. That's not bad because you're still getting some ventilation here down below. That's not gonna hurt temps too much, and you still get a sneak peek above. So kind of the best of both worlds there. But yeah, options, those are always good. Wow, pretty shocking how quiet this system is. I think my AC running is a bit louder than this system, and I am right next to it. This is such a small CPU cooler for an unlocked Core i7. Like I said, I'm not gonna be doing any overclocking, but I'm also not worried about thermals thanks to the perforations throughout this Performance 1M. Now I already have Windows loaded on the M.2 we installed in this machine. It's actually a dedicated Intel drive. It does have a few different programs already loaded on it. One thing I do want to show you is a 3D Mark Time Spy average score for this combination of hardware. You can see we average better than 97% of all submitted results. This has more to do with the graphics card than the CPU. The GPU is definitely among the best out there. Only a few NVIDIA cards that will barely squeak it out, with the exception of the 4090, which is kind of just like an all-around champ, especially from a VRAM side of things. It's just not really a value king at this point. It's becoming increasingly difficult to find a 4090 at a decent price, seeing as though 50 series stuff is shortly coming. The 7800 XTX, like I said, is the best of the best from Team Red, and if you can find one for around 700-ish USD, I'd say that's a really good price. Good luck actually pulling that off though. You're not probably going to be able to find too many around that price point, especially in the new market, and that's why again I'd recommend a GRE. But if you insist on having the best, it is definitely capable of keeping up with among the best gaming PCs on the planet. Again, at least until NVIDIA announces 50 series stuff. You know, I've got to say at this point, I'm not very surprised by a chassis like this. Antec has been pumping out banger after banger as of late. This one is definitely a different take, and they're not super into the ITX space yet, at least in terms of their new branding, their new direction. I think this chassis is on the right path, and if I'm being honest, there are a few things that I would still change about it. I don't think any product is perfect. This one I think is a little large considering what it does support. I would like to see maybe a 240mm radiator support or something like that if we could shift this entire central frame upward maybe another inch or two, or maybe just shortening the length of the case overall to reduce volume. I think right now we're close to 20 liters, but if we reduce the depth of the case, which of course would limit our graphics card support, but I think that's probably worth it for the eventually market Antecs after here, we could maybe get it down to 15, possibly even 14 liters. At that point, it would definitely compete with many of the smaller sandwich style ITX chassis on the market. This is a great start though. It is a little bit larger, but it's definitely on the right track. It looks incredible, and it supports nearly every graphics card on the market, which again that's a difficult ask for any ITX chassis, let alone one that's more sandwich style like the Performance 1M. And as usual, you can learn more about it by clicking the sponsor link below. We'll also have all of the other components we've used to throw this rig together in the description if you'd like to build something similar. That's usually tied to our Amazon and possibly Newegg, but usually not Newegg affiliate links. It's not much per sale, but it does add up. All of that support is greatly appreciated. Also want to give a shout to Antec for their continued support of this channel, especially in 2024. We've worked with them so closely over so many different case launches, and I mean, I cannot think of a single product released as of late that I didn't like. Now, you're never going to please everybody, especially in the ITX department. There are a lot of folks that are very particular about what they're after, and so the Performance 1M might not be your cup of tea, but it is an option. It is an ITX case after all. It's one of the few that Antec currently offers with this sort of revised like aesthetic approach they've been taking as of late, and I expect this will only get better with time. I want to thank you so much for watching. Consider leaving a comment, subscribing, leaving a like, whatever you feel like doing. Join our public Discord server down below. Again, check out those relevant links and consider sticking around for the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.